Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Fonville, brand manager at Syssero. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's Fireside chat is all about what happens during a Workday launch implementation, the challenges, the learning curves, and how to set up your team for success. And I'm joined by three of our amazing Syssero consultants, Danielle, Jenny, and Mary, who've been on both sides of this process, both as clients and now as trusted advisors through our LEAP implementation assistance program. So to start, can each of you just share a little bit about your background and what led you to move over from the client side to consulting, and what perspective that has given you now that you're helping clients? And also, just for fun, if you had to describe implementation in one word, what would it be? So let's start with you, Mary.
Hi, I'm Mary Byers. I've been with Syssero now for 4 years as a consultant. I started in the Workday ecosystem about 9 years ago, and my introduction was a Workday implementation. I was on the client side as a compensation manager, and it was an extremely complex healthcare implementation, and it was probably one of the most stressful times of my career. I think going through that ultimately is what got me on the path to want to become a Workday consultant so I could help customers try and make sure that they did not make the same mistakes that we did. And I've been doing this now, the consulting work, for about 4 years now, and I love it. I would say one word to describe an implementation for me would probably be the word challenging.
Fair. All right, Danielle, you're next.
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Danielle Smith. I've spent about a decade working with Workday, starting in consulting and then moving to the HRIS side for both a healthcare and a global flooring company before returning to consulting. So, having been on both sides, it's given me the opportunity to get that experience in the full Workday lifecycle from implementation through post prod. And that perspective has really helped me look at the system holistically. And it's been something that Syssero has really embraced. And then a word that I would use to describe that implementation journey is new. I use that because it's both growth and grit, and it's positive and negative and all of the things simultaneously.
Love that. And Jenny.
Thanks. I'm Jenny Siska. I have about 10 years of HR experience and close to 6 years of Workday experience. And my Workday journey started on the customer side as part of a very small team that was implementing Workday for the first time. It was tough. What pulled me into consulting was realizing how powerful it is to blend HR experience, implementation exposure, and Workday technical expertise. So I know what it's like to make sense of configuration decisions, manage change, field questions from every direction, and keep your day job moving too. So I genuinely understand what clients are navigating, and that empathy is how I show up in every project. And for the fun question, implementation in one word, I would describe it as transformation. So it changes processes, teams, and changes the way that people think about their work.
Thank you. All right, so let's get started talking about implementations. So let's start with why a Workday implementation can feel so big, because they are. Moving to Workday isn't just a system change, like you said, Jenny. It's a people change. Everything in Workday is connected: HCM and finance and payroll, which is very powerful, but also means the ripple effect is everywhere. It's exciting, but it can be overwhelming. So let's talk about why implementations are so transformative and how teams can navigate that with more confidence. So first, my question is for you, Jenny. Why do you think that moving to Workday is such a transformational experience for clients?
Sure. So Workday forces organizations to look at themselves. They have to look at their processes, their data, their handoffs, and their pain points too. You can't just recreate what you had before. You really have to rethink it. Workday creates so many efficiencies through its business process flows, which are, routing, accountability, approvals, and visibility that are all built into the way that the system operates. But to get those benefits, teams do have to adjust the way that they work. For HR teams that are used to getting things done by just emailing someone or walking over to a team member's desk, Workday introduces structure and consistency across every process. So that's really exciting, but it can feel new and unfamiliar at first. So at Cicero, we help teams navigate the human side of the change as much as the technical side, making sure that the system they're designing truly aligns with their business needs and requirements, and that they understand the decisions that they're making throughout the process too.
So, a little bit more specifically about launch implementation, Mary, what do you think are some of the key elements specifically of a launch implementation that we should talk about right now?
Right. So yeah, that's specifically what we help our customers with, right? Our Workday launch implementations, and it's a very prescriptive and rapid deployment approach, and it follows a very structured methodology. So the main components are organized into four distinct stages. So the first stage is the plant stage, right? So you're going to basically confirm what the scope of the project is, the timeline of the project, and all the key deliverables. The next stage you're going to move into is the architect and configure stage. So you're going to collaborate. The implementation partners will collaborate with the customer to gather all the business requirements. They're going to use the Workday pre-configure business process solutions as a starting point and kind of make those tweaks throughout the process that fits what the customer needs. Then you're going to move into the test stage. So this is a big part of what the customer is going to be doing, right? The primary goal of the test stage is to validate all the configuration solutions and ensure that the customer is ready for deployment. And then the very last stage is your deploy stage, where the consultant moves all of the information into their live production tenant and they're ready to go live.
Awesome. So, Danielle, Workday's strength is that everything is connected. As we've talked about, HCM and payroll and finance, they're all in one system. But that interconnectivity can also make the process feel really overwhelming. So, how do you help your clients see that connection early on when they're starting all of these stages that Mary just went through?
Absolutely. So, Workday functional areas definitely do not exist in a silo. So, my goal is really to help clients understand that, yes, there is that initial lift that requires a really solid amount of determination, but ultimately, the system leads to faster processes, better reporting, more reliable pay, smoother cycles, easier administration in general. So, this interconnectivity is also an opportunity for those departmental relations to improve because the source of truth really can be trusted for multiple areas of the business.
Got it. So, Mary, one of the stages you had mentioned, when the clients are really deep in these design decisions, I'm sure it's easy to lose sight of the big picture. So, when that's happening and they're trying to get all this interconnectivity together, as Danielle just talked about, how does our team act as both an advisor, a friend, helping them navigate through not just the system, but the change itself that they're going through?
Yeah, this is where I think our consultants do a really good job leaning into their past client side experience, right? Most of us come from that world,
Mhm.
and we've been through these implementations. So we really try to get them to understand that we've not only been in their shoes and have done this from the client side, but we've also done this for past customers and we've helped them through these launch implementations. So I think this is really a point where we can really lean into that and where we have this experience from both sides of the house.
I think it makes it really unique here at Cicero. Okay, so now that we've talked about why implementations can be such a big lift, let's shift to why implementation assistance, what it actually means, and where Cicero fits into the picture. We've sort of touched on it, but let's dig a little deeper. Our LEAP program, for those of you who don't know, was built to support Workday clients specifically during these launch implementations, giving them a partner who can guide and advise, be their friend, and fill the gaps that often pop up along the way. So let's break that down. What LEAP really is, why clients have chosen it, and how it fits into the broader Workday ecosystem. Danielle, when you explain LEAP to a new client, how do you describe what we do?
Absolutely. So, our LEAP program is essentially an enhancement to your Workday implementation. So, since Workday implementations can be so complex,
Mhm.
LEAP gives you access to seasoned Workday experts who walk alongside your team through that accelerated process. So, we will help you validate configuration, provide best practices, ensure nothing gets overlooked, and so just think of it as having an experienced Workday best friend to make sure your implementation is efficient and accurate and aligned all the way through.
I love that. Jenny, when you've worked with clients, I'm sure that many of them started out thinking that they could go it alone. Why is having advisory support, best friend support, like Danielle said, during the implementation so important? And what do you think tends to shift once they start working with us?
So implementation moves really, really fast. The terminology is new, everything is interconnected, and clients don't often realize until they're in it just how many decisions they're making each day. Advisory support gives them a safety net, so someone to help validate decisions, explain implications, and make sure that nothing slips through the cracks. And beyond that, the success of an implementation really comes down to the decisions that clients make, how well their configuration aligns to their business requirements, and how clearly they understand the impact of those design choices, and how thoroughly they test. When clients have someone who is guiding them through that testing and decision making, you can feel their stress lift. They stop feeling like they have to figure it all out on their own and start feeling empowered to make the right decisions.
Mary, I've heard you say before that having Syssero involved from the very beginning changes everything about how clients transition after go live as well. So, can you expand on that a little bit? How does early involvement from Syssero set them up for smoother post go live success?
Yeah, we've just seen when we're involved from the beginning, our clients really are set up for greater success with us in an advisory role that we can really hit the ground running and support them post go live.
Mhm.
We're there to really understand the decisions that were made during the implementation, which really helps us with those post go live configuration planning. We know which of the post go live enhancements are a priority to the organization. And like I said, we hit the ground running and we can just get them optimized so much quicker when we're there from the beginning.
Because you have a history with them.
Right.
Got it. Okay, so even with a great implementation partner, I'm sure there are always a few gray areas, those moments where the configuration meets real life. And that's where Syssero steps in. Our LEAP team bridges the gap between Workday, the implementer, and the client's team, translating needs and solving problems and just keeping everything really connected. So let's talk about where those gaps are, where they tend to show up, and how this translator role really makes a difference. Jenny, I'll start with you. Where do you most often see clients struggle during that process?
Sure, a lot of the struggle happens in the gray space between configuration and real life usability. Clients need to make sure that what they ask for is truly what is configured in the tenant
Mhm.
and what actually works for their business needs. And that only becomes clear through thorough testing. I see challenges with security, governance, testing scenarios, or understanding what a design choice really means downstream.
Mhm.
One of the benefits gained by working with our team for lead implementation assistance is that we've seen the challenges through our own experience across the clients that we support during their implementations and through our own day-to-day work with our AMS clients as well. That allows us to call out things proactively to say, hey, let's test this scenario, or have you thought about how this will work in real life? Lead clients also often don't know what's possible during implementation. Even something simple like adding a notification to a business process can create meaningful efficiencies on day one. We also maintain a list of future enhancements to work on post go live for anything that they want, but just isn't in scope during implementation. So we translate the system into everyday reality. How managers will use it, what HR needs to maintain, what processes break without ownership. And we help clients ask the right questions and catch things that would otherwise show up as problems post go live.
Kind of like they don't know what they don't know, and we can help them to know it. So, thank you. Danielle, how do you think our team steps in to bridge those gaps? And do you have any real world stories that have stood out to you that you could share?
Yeah, absolutely. So we definitely do help you speak the language of Workday. Something I hear from every single one of my customers is it's like a different language. So definitely think of us as your translator, therapist, and guide throughout this journey. We're always listening and observing to determine how we can help transform those pain points into optimization. So we advocate for you and speak to those years of experience without coming across as superior. So there's truly no stupid questions in this process, but it can be very intimidating to ask an implementer, now, how do I launch a hire again? And that's really what we're here for, to guide you through those small things and the big. And we're also going to help you identify the risks to the health of those touch points and interconnectivity that we talked about earlier in a way that feels clarifying and not more confusing.
I love that. A safe space to ask all of the questions. Mary, I would say that you are known for thinking ahead. So, how do you help clients make decisions during implementation that support the long-term goals, especially after they're live?
Yeah, so one of the things I'd like to get them in the mindset is to try and map out their current internal processes that they're using in their legacy systems now, and really get them to understand that during the implementation is not the time to rebuild all new processes that have not been discussed with all the key stakeholders, right? Inevitably, those processes are going to become more efficient in Workday once you're in that system of one, but during the implementation is not the time to build new. And then the next thing I'd really try to get them to focus on is what I like to call the 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time, what are your normal business processes? Because what customers tend to do is go down the rabbit holes. And that's what we're really trying to avoid, especially during a launch implementation, is to get them to focus on 80% of the time, how is this process going to work? The other 20% of the time is something that we can focus on after go live. But that's two of the main things that I really try to focus on to get them to get to those long-term goals.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get into what implementation looks like in action. Testing. Testing is where everything comes together, and from what you've all said, where challenges often pop up. So it's that phase where it can make or break a smooth go live. And our team, I believe, spends a lot of times guiding clients through test scenarios, answering questions about testing, and helping them troubleshoot in real time. Let's talk about exactly what that looks like and some of the lessons that we've learned along the way when it comes to testing. So, Jenny, I'll start with you. Why is it so critical for clients to have consistent support through that phase specifically?
Testing is where everything becomes real. Clients start to see how the system behaves, and that's when the questions, the edge cases, and the tense moments can appear. Testing is so important. It's not only how you learn the system, it's how you confirm that what you designed actually supports your business requirements. Using the delivered package test scenarios is not enough. You have to create your own test scenarios that match the real transactions, unique situations, and exceptions that your organization faces. And you need to do negative testing too, making sure that the system behaves correctly when something shouldn't work. Passing the delivered scenarios alone doesn't mean that your system's ready. Testing also gives the team a safe space to understand routing, get comfortable with the workflows, and build confidence before go live.
Got it. It's like the lead up to the big game. It's like the last dress rehearsal. Got it.
Yes.
Danielle, can you share a time when you think that our team's involvement, especially during testing, helped identify or resolve an issue before it turned into some kind of major problem?
Absolutely. So I know we've spoken a little bit about business processes so far, and I'll go a little bit further into that. We really stress testing the business processes as you will be doing them in your real life. So think of it as you're at work on a Tuesday afternoon. So when you're hiring SpongeBob SquarePants or Mickey Mouse for testing, just pretend that it's an engineer in their warehouse or a loan officer in Tulsa. I've really seen these processes optimized for testing and then very quickly need to be overhauled once the customer is live because they aren't actually following the flow that works for the team dynamic. So you make sure that you're thinking about your actual security, your actual team, your actual workflow, and then everything else will kind of line up from there.
Yeah. So it has to be real life, no
Yes.
SpongeBob usually.
Yes.
Yeah, got it. Mary, what's one of the real life moments in an implementation, something clients never expect, and how do we help them through it?
Yeah, one of the things that kind of aligns to what Danielle was talking about is, in your real life scenarios, there's real life handoffs between functional areas, right? So, one of the things that I really try to get customers to do is to test in groups with those different functional stakeholders, right? So, your recruiting talent acquisition team will eventually be done with their recruiting process and are ready to hire a new employee. And that probably is going to get handed off to somebody in the HR team, right? So, really getting those teams to connect during the testing process is something that a lot of the teams aren't usually prepared for, that I really try to get them to kind of orchestrate and do. It's really important to make sure that everything that happened throughout, for example, the recruiting life cycle is preparing that candidate to become an employee. Sitting down with those groups and doing what we like to call, in the biz, end-to-end testing. So making sure that the functional areas are connecting properly.
Got it. Okay, so as we all know, go live is not the finish line. It's really just the start of a new phase. And after launch, clients shift from building the system to truly owning it. That's where governance comes into play, and security and ongoing optimization. All of that is important at this point. Our team stays involved through our LEAP model, helping clients fine tune and adjust and keep their Workday system running smoothly after go live. So my first question for Danielle, how does Syssero help clients transition from that hectic implementation mode to more of a steady state?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really have that steady state in mind throughout the whole implementation journey. We're being very proactive to determine if there's anything that we can get ahead of to avoid that day one panic. And that day one panic is very common. So we're familiar with that. We do identify optimizations throughout the implementation process that might be out of scope. So we partner with you to plan those upgrades in a way that makes sense at a time that makes sense with the stakeholders that are actually involved. So we also operate under the goal of empowerment and protection. We are helping you lay the foundation of becoming the expert and just ensuring that you feel safe to own this brand new system. I tell my customers, if you don't know the answer, it's okay. There are times that after a decade, I don't even know the answer. It's really about giving you the tools to find them in a way that feels productive.
So, Mary, during implementations, we often, track the quote unquote someday items that clients can't prioritize right away, like we talked about before. How does that carry into their optimization roadmap after go live?
Yeah, so that kind of leans back into, why it's so important for us to be there at the beginning, right? Because we, from the very beginning of the discussions and the very beginning of the project, we start to cultivate that list, what we call our post-go-live optimization tracker. So all of the consultants that are on all the design calls that know things that ultimately won't be able to be configured for go-live, we put it on the list, and we call it kind of like the customer wish list, right? So things that maybe aren't absolutely crucial for day-to-day operations, but would be nice as an optimization project. And then sometimes, we reprioritize that list throughout the project, right? Things shift, things change, some things fall off the list. A lot of times we add to that list, but it's a really great starting point for when the customer goes live, and we're there to then jump in and really start to configure and help them optimize their system.
It reinforces how valuable it is to have somebody, a partner who's been with you since day one, who understands your system, but also the goals that you have, and comes in with that knowledge. So as we wrap up, I want to ask you all if you could share just one piece of advice with clients about to start their Workday implementation. A lot of them might be watching. What would that advice be? And also, what's one thing that you wish more clients took time to celebrate along the way? Because that's important too. Mary, why don't you start?
Yeah, so I try to kind of remind them to think of the big picture of moving into Workday, because throughout the implementation, there's a lot of struggles, right? the teams are doing their day-to-day job on the customer side, as well as doing this huge implementation project. So to the managers, I say, remember that. Remember your teams are still doing their day-to-day job, and then on top of it, trying to build out this new beautiful system. So celebrate those little wins, right? And try to kind of take the pressure off of them sometimes so that they can really try to think of, again, that big picture of moving to a better, more efficient system one day where that is ultimately going to make their job better.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Danielle, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would just say give yourself a lot of grace as you learn. Remember that every mistake made or learning opportunity during testing and implementation is a crisis avoided in the future. So take it all as a win. And our job is to help with what feels really big right now throughout the implementation journey. Just remember that it will become second nature very quickly. The system is intuitive. So as your knowledge grows, you'll feel comfortable to kind of go outside of your scope to learn more.
And Jenny?
So I have two pieces of advice I could not decide between. Okay. So the first one is to stay curious, ask questions, and speak up and say something when something doesn't make sense. Also, develop a process for change control. This allows for an audit trail of changes, ensuring that changes aren't made without structure. And then one thing that I wish that was celebrated more, it's similar to Mary, but just celebrating the small wins, the moments when something clicks or when a process gets simpler. Implementations are so intense, but there's so much growth along the way. So those moments deserve to be celebrated.
Thank you. I love all those answers because I think it really captures what we're talking about. And I think what LEAP is, implementations aren't just about technology. Obviously, the technology is amazing and so important, but it's about people and, their growth and the long-term success of the company. So to everybody watching, thank you so much for joining us. And if you are prepping a Workday implementation and you want to partner like Jenny or Danielle or Mary or the rest of the team at Syssero to help you, to guide you, to support you and celebrate all the small wins, please reach out. We'd love to connect and talk about LEAP and all of our other service offerings. Thank you so much for being here.